Today, we're here to talk about the practical aspects of security in real-world applications. This is the stuff that I do with our partners like Sunny Dosanjh from DUSA.
Thank you to everyone who's here, and I appreciate your time and attention. Sunny Dosanjh, CEO, founder of DUSA Space, or DUSA Space. I've been involved in the military for about 40 years, United States Air Force in the 80s, all the way through, on and off, US Navy, US Army, different projects, and in the civilian sector. So how do the two integrate, interoperate, as we've seen networks evolve, cybersecurity used to be a backseat, now become at the forefront, how applications, how virtualization, how does that all play together? And how does that all play together in multi-domains? So I'll touch upon a few things that we are involved in from a quantum perspective. In this conversation, I'll keep it to cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So maybe we could start with a bit of a general question. I mean, there's been a lot of talk at this conference about PQC, QKD, and where best cases to use it, when not to use it, who recommends it, who doesn't recommend it, etc. But maybe we could get some empirical data here by asking each of you to come with, based on your interactions with your customers in the defense sector, you know, what you are sensing in your interactions in terms of PQC versus QKD in the context of quantum safe. Sunny, shall we start with you again?
Sure, that's a great question. How would I say this? For about the last 18 months, as I've been comparing and contrasting in our labs of how PQC, let's pick on that one, of how it's effective for one particular military branch. Pros and cons, how you have to interoperate in a system that's already in production, let's use that word. Mm-hmm. Then how do you incorporate without what we use in the civilian sector, you know, rip and replace. We have to keep things operational. So what's more effective, what's realistic? Just to show that this capability and this science, if you will, of post-quantum crypto is actually doing its part. So can we operate in a hybrid mode where certain systems are going to take a while to upgrade just because of physical limitations of the vessel? And so how can you quickly prove out a model in real time? And for a lot of us who have been in cybersecurity, we're often burdened with the performance hit afterwards. So it's one thing to put measures in place, but do you really need the belts and suspenders? When we looked at the PQC side of the house, we stood it up, tested it out. Did it function? Did it operate? And then we started looking at the performance. So really look at the efficiency. Now, when you compare that to doing something with QKD, especially when you go into different orbits, it's a little more involved. So there is a time constraint of if you are looking for results and you are looking at standards and you are looking at the civilian side versus what can be done on a closed network. What can you really do without some of those rules, policy, and government ordinances or limitations coming into play? So that's the way we approached it, and we're seeing some initial results where in the United States, PQC seems to be moving at a faster clip for certain situations. Let me just leave it at that.
Okay, but you're seeing both, sounds like, both PQC and QKD?
Yeah, I look at it globally. Yeah. So I'd be remiss if I did not say that in certain theaters of operation, we have to interoperate. There's no way around it. Even if it's a closed system, okay, you're going to have to use a mix and match approach, even though for some scenarios, you will go down one path, let's say a PQC path. Okay. But if you're going to play friendly with boots on the ground in other nations, then you're going to have to mix and match.
Okay, okay, thank you. Sunny, do you also have experience with special requirements or additional requirements for military applications?
Yeah, it goes without saying, for anything in the military, beholden to a different set of standards than the civilian sector. I've been in Silicon Valley for the last 35 years, it seems like, and although we're pushing the envelope of what civilians can utilize and adopt around the globe. If I go back to my military days in the Air Force in the 80s, I was in the 509th Bombardment Wing. There's a new plane coming out in the next few years. It's in test phase right now, the B-21 Raider, right? And so if you look at the cockpit of the Raider, and this is public knowledge, so I'm not disclosing any confidential information, it's a Kubernetes orchestration. And if you look at how the microservices communicate with each other, and you're going to replace that TLS or mutual TLS layer with it's not going to be QKD, it has to be PQC, because what are you going to do in the cockpit if you're going to secure those containers, as well as the performance? So as we now go into communication channels into low Earth orbit, LEO or GEO, and we start to look at what's practical from SAT to SAT communication, and then what's practical into the cockpit and into the helmet of cognition and controlling systems, now we're getting into simulation. So what we have the capability of doing of a digital twin of a B-21 Raider is a little different when we look at systems of control and implementation. Can that translate one day to the civilian sector? Yes, in the gaming section and what you see there. But the performance and the security protocols that we utilize for that communication channel and then making sure it's not compromised is something that we are using different measures of control. That I see the difference when I look at healthcare, financials, and different sectors in the civilian side. Without getting into details, those are some general thoughts.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Sunny, your thoughts on this, the increasing importance of data and how it's accelerating the adaptation of...
I just want to make sure I'm at the right show. If you're asking data or network or PQC or QKD, because it's a different concept. If you're going to switch to data, it's a different mindset altogether. What I see here is just the starting points of QKD, PQC. We're early stages of building networks. If you go back 25 years, we did not know what the apps would look like or what the data repercussions were. So this time around, I go, let me work it backwards. I talked about the digital twin. I talked about streaming into the cockpit. We're looking at, most people think of data and they think of structured or unstructured or semi-structured. We're thinking of files or we're thinking of databases. I'm looking at pixels, and about 10 years ago I was looking at voxels as we were streaming into the cockpit of showing simulated turbulence, not a two-line text. So as we look at data integrity and whether it's stored or in use, I think another gentleman mentioned in transit, at rest, there's a different mindset when you look at data constructs as well as how you do the analysis on it. So those are different topics of where does quantum play into that? Obviously quantum computers, quantum sensors, but from the security, from a cybersecurity standpoint, I'm looking at how is that data being viewed? So we look at from a distribution of that data over a quantum facilitated infrastructure. And the term I usually come up with is an armored browser. If we're looking at browser-based, if we're going app-based, obviously different story. But that consumption of data and then the hit, the performance hit, based upon how that data is constructed, can it utilize the network in an optimal way? So these are usually done in silos. They're usually, if history has taught us anything, is that the network guys don't talk to the app guys, don't talk to the data, platform, policy. It's all siloed. So what my approach is, I go, I'm going to do it different. You know, we've tried it kind of hop, skip, and jump over the last 40 years. There has to be a better way. So when I look at my EU partners, my partners in Asia Pac, LATAM, and obviously here in North America, I go, we have a way to shift this paradigm. And so you know what? We're going to go for it. And time will tell if we're near or close to the target. But the goal is whether that data is utilized in a physical space, a virtual space, we're going into cognition. We're going into different areas of how airmen, sailors, Marines, soldiers, and so on are thinking with the data and then how they're modeling that into an actionable result, if you will.
Great, thank you very much. Sunny, you get the last word.
Yes, I think what's overlooked when we talk about quantum safe in the military, it's not just equipment and devices, but it's the people, it's the humans, and we get damaged, we get hurt. So how quickly can you transfer information over these quantum infrastructures that are being secured by PQC or QKD to get the right information to that medic in the battlefield or in the hospital, whether they're in Europe or Asia or back here in the United States. So you want to get that information about what the condition is, so the surgeon or the medic, and if we're going into exoskeletons, if we're going into other health-related treatments, that network that is now being secured without false positives, without being compromised as far as what the decisions are going into cognition or physical, is what DUSA is primarily leading with. Because we see the repercussions, what happens with veterans here with PTSD. And the initiatives with the American Legion, I'm also a Royal British Legionnaire, we're looking to cut down some of those suicides from 22 a day down as much as we can. So my goal is to make sure that the network is not compromised. That's table stakes. And what we do with cognition and devices in the military and in the veteran community is what we're championing.
Great. Thank you very much, Sunny.
Welcome to DUSA Space, where we focus on quantum information services, essentially building the bridge from the classic to the quantum internet. We start with quantum spaces, data moments, and sensory engagements, focused on military veterans who are suffering from PTSD. We partner with companies who are focused on quantum sensors, quantum computers, and post-quantum cryptography. Not only do we help military veterans, but also those who are on active duty. For more information, contact us at dusa.space.